Okay, it's recorded. Chat away. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle. How lovely to hear from you. I'm Rob. I'm Chris's older cousin. I sort of grew up with him at the end of the war, etc., down at Southampton. And I can tell you, when he was a little boy, he was a little bugger. He got up to all sorts of tricks. He was, in later life, as you may or may not know, he had polio, and he spent some time in an iron lung. And then he was in the Archbishop Treloar home, where he had steel splints put in his leg. And he did walk with a limp, but he was a very handsome young man, and very obviously a young ladies' man. And as far as I remember, he worked in a men's outfitters in Bournemouth, and his father, Roy, who used to work at Bewley in the New Forest, he used to go there on a small BSA Bantam, which he gave to Chris. And unfortunately, it was Chris riding home on that when he was killed when he was about 21. But I spent many years down there with him and his older brother Roy, who was about my own age. Roy went into the RAF for National Service and then Civil Aviation Authority, so never saw much of him. And then, of course, after Chris died, I then spent most time in London. But it's lovely that you have made contact, and I hope that you will continue to do so.
Tell me about when you were on the raft. You three built a raft and nearly sailed across to France. Oh
yes, because just down through the fields was the Southampton water to Warsash, which was not very far away, and we built a raft with oil drums and things and got it floating, but of course we weren't very good seamen, and the blooming thing drifted away, and we nearly got marooned, but we got back. But Chris always, I can tell you, when he was a little boy, when he was about 6-7 years old, his dad, my Uncle Roy, made him a lovely wooden, about this long, steam locomotive. It was only wooden, it wasn't mechanical. And what he would do, he would go up the stairs to the first landing, and then he'd push it, and it would go down the stairs, boom, 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 and his poor mother would come crying, "Oh, Christopher, what's the matter?" And of course there was nothing wrong with him, he'd done it just to get attention. And on a later occasion, our uncle, who was in the Navy, our Uncle Sid, he came home on leave from Portsmouth, and he brought for me and Roy, but not for Christopher, a naval issue. No, I'm trying to think what they call it.
Right.
It was I won't say a pocket knife because it was quite long and it had a big marlin spike and a blade. And I was with Roy and a couple of the others out in the garden talking, and Christopher was left out of things because he was younger, and suddenly, doop, the knife, the marlin spike, stuck in the shed at the side of us, and that was the sort of little villain that Christopher was, but he was a lovable villain, and it's very sad that he didn't last that long. But I'm so pleased that you have made the contact and that we're now finding out about your existence and your difficult life. I'm sure it must be very difficult for you, but it's lovely to be in contact with you. And if in the future there's anything else you would like to know that we may know of, by all means, through Russell, do let us know. Bye-bye, darling.
Are you going to tell her about her grandmother and grandfather?
Oh, Chris's mum and dad, yeah.
Well, she never met them.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that, sorry, it's such a long while ago. The thing was, Uncle Roy, his father, he came from a theatrical family in Bournemouth. They lived in Bournemouth, and they used to appear, amongst other things, in the Pierrot show on the pier and things of that nature. And during wartime, his father worked at Ferry Aviation over at Hythe, where they used to repair Spitfires, Hurricanes and aircraft to get them back into the war, and he worked there, and he was very musical and very artistic. He did some wonderful watercolours, he played the guitar, he played the saxophone, he played the violin, and he knew many ditties, shall we say, from the seaside ditties from the shows. And he and his wife, my Auntie Vi, Chris's mum, they really were a second mum and dad to me, because I spent a lot of the wartime down there with them and grew up partially in that area. And one of the things that might interest you, I didn't realise it, of course, in 1944 the lane outside came absolutely chock-a-block with Bren gun carriers, lorries, tanks, all sorts of things, and the military, all these soldiers. And Auntie Vi, his mum, sent us out with sandwiches and jugs of tea for the soldiers. And of course that was the troops all ready for D-Day, which of course as a 10, 11-year-old I didn't realise what they were, but that was a memory of wartime. And eventually, of course, the first one to go was Uncle Roy, was Chris, who was killed on the motorbike, and then eventually Uncle Roy, because he was severely asthmatic and had been a smoker, and then eventually Roy, who he had cancer, that killed him, and Auntie Vi, I can remember going to see her when all three of them had died, and I said to her, Auntie Vi, how do you manage? You've lost all three of the most precious ones of your family. And she said, Robin, she said, you have to stack up your memories and you keep your memories. So I hope you also will be able to get some more memories. And it's lovely to speak to you. Bye-bye, darling.